Being someone whose childhood really was revolved around the Xbox 360, it sucks to have to say this generation to follow, which is the Xbox One, is failing and declining fast. Last generation, Microsoft's console took the gaming world by shock, and was direct competition to Sony's PlayStation 3. While Nintendo's Wii may have taken the top spot in terms of sales, I would argue though that Nintendo has always served a different audience than Xbox and PlayStation, being more family friendly. But Sony's PlayStation 2 stands as the top-selling console of all time, selling around 157 million consoles, while Microsoft's Xbox sold a decent 24 million consoles. There's a lot of factors to why and how the Xbox 360 ended up being direct competition to the PlayStation 3, but one of the most important reasons is the games. Back around 10 years ago, Halo and Gears of War were Microsoft's exclusive franchises. They were new, refreshing, and most importantly at the height of their popularity, providing both a unique single-player and multiplayer experience. Besides just that, having a timed exclusive deal for DLC with Call of Duty was a big deal back then. The Xbox 360 would end up selling around 86 million consoles, while the PlayStation 3 would sell around 87 million, and right ahead was Nintendo's Wii, which sold around 102 million. Like I said, there are many factors contributing to why the Xbox 360 succeeded, but the fact that Microsoft was able to get that close to Nintendo and Sony was a pretty big surprise. Now this next generation with the Xbox One has been pretty close to the opposite direction that Microsoft wanted and needed to go in. At the end of 2013, the launch year for these next generation of consoles, Sony's PlayStation 4 had sold 4.2 million consoles, while the Xbox One trailed behind at 3 million sales. Now just over a week ago, here at the end of 2017, Sony revealed that the PlayStation 4 has now sold over 70 million consoles, while the latest figures that can be found date back to October, where the Xbox One has sold only around 32 million consoles. Even with the launch of the Xbox One X, which has been hyped up as the most powerful console, in November Sony's PlayStation 4 still outsold the Xbox One, and even reportedly had its best month in sales yet. Microsoft's Xbox One unfortunately is losing this console generation. It's because their focus has been on the wrong things. The one very important thing that has set the PlayStation 4 apart from the Xbox One is the first-party games. The Xbox One has continued to rely on Halo and Gears of War with new developers taking over on both franchises. Has it worked? Yes and no. Gears of War 4 was probably Xbox One's highlight game of 2016 and certainly shows promise, while Halo, since Bungie moved on, has not been able to get the same footing with 343 Industries. Unfortunately though, for both of these franchises, the popularity has dwindled and Microsoft is struggling with their new first-party games. Cuphead in 2017 has been the Xbox One's highlight game, but besides that, since the Xbox One launched, some of the top exclusives include Sunset Overdrive, Dead Rising 3, Forza, Titanfall, and Halo Wars 2. The pretty big flops for the Xbox One include ReCore, Quantum Break, and Rise Son of Rome. Of all the Xbox One games we've mentioned, this is basically what Microsoft has presented outside of just the normal Halo and Gears of War games since the Xbox One launched. PUBG is another game that you could add to this list, as it's a console exclusive for the Xbox One right now, selling pretty well, but with many critics and players complaining that the game just does not play very well right now. The future of the Xbox One in terms of exclusives right now only holds 3 big games, which is State of Decay 2, Crackdown 3, and Sea of Thieves. Back in September of 2016, there were many worries when Microsoft cancelled Scalebound, which highlighted the troubling future for the Xbox brand, and since then very little has been done to make you think that this generation can be saved. The PlayStation 4 since it launched has had so many console exclusives, which can be highlighted by Uncharted 4, Uncharted The Lost Legacy, Horizon Zero Dawn, Ratchet & Clank, Persona 5, Bloodborne, Gravity Rush 2, Infamous Second Son, The Last Guardian, Knack, Nier Automata, Gran Turismo Sport, and so many more. The best thing and biggest differences between Sony and Microsoft is that the PlayStation 4 already has so many highly anticipated games from known franchises to brand new ones coming in the near future. This includes Days Gone, Death Stranding, Detroit Become Human, God of War, Ghost of Tsushima, Final Fantasy VII Remake, The Last of Us Part 2, Marvel's Spider-Man, Shadow of the Colossus Remake, Shenmue 3, Wild, and again many more. Kotaku recently wrote an interesting piece about the state of the Xbox One, and with one quote you can see the big issue that is not getting addressed yet. Kotaku writes, Microsoft has spent the past 2 years focusing on things other than games. In 2016 it was building Xbox Xbox into a gaming platform, spanning console and PC. 2017 was all about the world's most powerful console, but with no current plans to introduce games that will only run on the One X. It's still just a more powerful Xbox One. 2018 needs to be about games. Nintendo's Switch has proven that the general audience and consumers don't really care about how powerful a console is, they just care about what there is to play. Sony's PlayStation 4 is continuing support of single player and Japanese games, which is also another driving force for why they will and have been successful. Recently, Sony's own president and CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment America and chairman of SIE Worldwide Studios, Sean Layden, laid down what they'll be doing moving forward, which essentially is continuing with what has worked so well for them.
What is your vision for PlayStation in 2018?
Well, I think we continue along our path, putting my Worldwide Studios hat on. I think in Worldwide Studios we have a lot of energy, a lot of devotion, a lot of love around storytelling, around narrative. You know, some people call that single-player gaming. We do have most of our eggs in that basket, just because that's the thing we do well, I think. In my humble opinion, IMHO. And I don't want to go to any of those teams and tell them, you know, I read in a magazine that there's something called Games as a Service. Make me one of those. I don't want to be that guy. So that's what we do. We do Horizon, we do God of War, we do Detroit, Uncharted, The Last of Us. These are the things that we're going to continue to, you know, lean into really strong. So I see our content story, you know, continue to play out that way.
I think it's important to understand that Sony has a plan that has worked well, and maybe Microsoft has one as well for the Xbox One, but it just doesn't seem it's worked as they wished. Other than just Sony's games, they've also managed to nag key timed exclusive content for games like Call of Duty, Destiny, and 2018's Red Dead Redemption 2, which is a big deal for the millions of players that play the multiplayer parts of these games. Right now the Xbox One is in trouble, and you could argue that the whole Xbox brand is in trouble. Microsoft has done some amazing things with their console, especially with backwards compatibility, which is one of the reasons why I play the console so much, but these last 4 years have been filled with a lot of disappointment. Certainly some of you will agree and disagree with me, but I just see Nintendo and Sony making the right directions while Microsoft is stuck in a hole. It also does not help with some of the statements that has come about this year, one of which is coming from Xbox head Phil Spencer, who said some questionable things about story games, saying, "The audience for those big story-driven games, I won't say it isn't as large, but they're not as consistent. You'll have things like Zelda or Horizon Zero Dawn that'll come out, and they'll do really well, but they don't have the same impact that they used to have, because the big service-based games are capturing such a large amount of the audience. Sony's first-party studios do a lot of these games, and they're good at them, but outside of that, it's difficult. They become more rare, it's a difficult business decision for those teams, you're fighting into more headwind." Additionally, with the Xbox never achieving any success really in Japan, with that being a major game market solely for Sony and Nintendo right now, a few months ago NIS America, a video game publisher, pointed out it's much more than just Japanese games that Microsoft needs to work on bringing to the Xbox. NIS America's CEO and president would say, "Honestly speaking, Microsoft's approach to Japanese games hasn't been very supportive. Microsoft, you know, for Japanese games, there's still a very niche element to them, no matter what it might be. Microsoft also has a minimum order quantity for their games, and their whole structure isn't really geared towards niche games or smaller games like Japanese titles, so they're not really supportive of Japanese games or developers." Recently, in early November, we did get some good news from Phil Spencer, in which he finally admitted that they need to invest more in first-party games, saying we need to grow, and I look forward to doing that. Our ability to go create content has to be one of our strengths. We haven't always invested at the same level. We've gone through ups and downs in the investment. He would also add that they are ready to open and purchase development studios to make this a reality. But the big problem that I see is that Microsoft or Xbox needs to invest in the right games. It almost seems that games as a service is something that they have been transitioning to, which alienates a lot of players. I do find it kind of odd that 4 years into this generation, they've finally realized that games are what matters. Leaning on third-party titles just has not worked for the Xbox One. While this console generation may be close to over, I'm not sure if there is time to turn around the Xbox One, but hopefully in a few years we'll be able to see changes in Microsoft's approach to their consoles, because games are what matter. Hardware and software may be important, but if there's no exclusive games to play, that's an issue. Sony and Nintendo have both put themselves in a great position with something for every type of player, and that's what Microsoft needs to do. I feel like I was having this conversation just the other day when Scalebound was cancelled, which actually that was 2016, but everyone I was talking to at that time was just like, wait till next year with E3 2017, where Xbox has to have some big things coming. But now around 15 months later, not much has changed and these worries have only escalated. In conclusion, Microsoft or Xbox needs to have more first-party games, but they also are going to have to figure out how to get players behind some of their newer franchises, which worked with State of Decay but failed with ReCore and Quantum Break. I feel like the Xbox One has an identity issue. It seems that Microsoft wants it to be so many things and it just hasn't worked out that way. And when I say worked, I mean it just hasn't caught consumers' attention. The Xbox One is a great console that is lacking in probably the most important category, and that is games. Hopefully Phil Spencer truly means they'll be investing in more games and studios, because Sony and Nintendo are killing it right now, while the Xbox brand moving into 2018 and beyond has a troubling future until actual real actions occur to change course. Anyway guys, what do you think about the Xbox brand? What do you think needs to be done to get players behind their console moving forward? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, but thank you for watching. Make sure to smack that like button if you did enjoy this video or found any informative value, and consider subscribing for more videos like this, and I'll see you later.